1942. World War II rages across the continents, and in the deserts of California, the quest for rocket supremacy ignites. A brilliant but unconventional rocket engineer emerges as a pivotal figure, pushing the boundaries of both science and the occult. While his daytime hours are consumed with explosive experiments in propulsion, by night, he delves into the dark rituals, seeking to marry the mystical with the mechanical. Behind the fiery rockets and chemical concoctions, his double life intertwines with figures from occult orders and top-secret government programs. His endeavors influence both the birth of modern rocketry and the underground world of esoteric exploration. But as brilliance often borders on madness, the line between genius and folly becomes increasingly blurred. In this case file, join the theorists as they navigate through propellants and pentagrams to probe the perplexing paradox of rocketry's rebellious ritualist, Jack Parsons.
You already on the sauce, did you say?
Welcome to Alien Theorists Theorizing Case File 293.
293?
The Jack Parsons Project.
I don't know if we'll call it that.
Jack Parsons and the Red Rockets.
That's pretty good.
I was thinking fucking Jack Parsons,
Trademark.
fucking Satan, Jets, and Jizz.
Oh, that's good. That's good too.
That's the album name.
Yeah.
That's the
I don't know
album,
if that's the
yeah.
name.
Or that's the follow-up album.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jack Parsons' dreams do come true.
That's the porno.
Jack Parsons, October Sky or Occults and Orgies.
I like it. Well, it's a working title. I'm Braden.
I'm Zell.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Andrew.
It's listen, it's been a weird week. We had to fucking kibosh the regular show. Now we're here a fucking weird Tuesday afternoon. You may have heard Andrew. Braden, you're already on the sauce? You just got off work. Yes, it's Tuesday.
Me too.
I found out, guys, I had a little bit of a health scare I didn't tell everyone about. Little bit.
You got
Turns out
diabetes?
I'm
Has
just,
something to do
a
with
little
those
fat.
You got
glasses?
diabetes?
Beaties?
A little fat.
Beatus?
That's all it is. So
You got
it's all
diabetes?
good.
Oh, the bitus?
No diabetes.
Oh, you found out that you're a little fat? Is that what happened?
Just a little fat, a little
Little
overweight.
fat.
It's too bad. I was hoping we could get like insulin advertisements or something like that. Be that poster child for it. I mean, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. You knew Wilson.
You're the poster child for type 2 diabetes.
I'm the new spokesperson.
Yeah.
In these glasses.
Those are something else.
Have you recently been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes?
Yeah, those are totally sunglasses Wilford Brimley.
Wilford Brimley's not around anymore, is he?
No,
He's probably
he'd wear
passed
those
on.
glasses if he was.
Yeah.
Dude, those glasses are they're just a little bit too wide, so I can see like the inside of your eye.
That's the only reason you
who
can
are those
see.
made for? Like,
Dude,
who are those made for
they
that
are
they're
very
like,
unsightly. That's the funny part. That's I
whose
love
eyes like
tiny
fit
glasses.
into that.
I mean,
like,
you-
that
I
they're
think
so
the-
far apart.
That's
lizard
that's the
people.
only reason you can see it of them because it gives you a little space to
A
put your
little
pupils
bit, yeah,
through.
right here,
True.
inside.
The actual lens is so dark, it's hard to see out of. So where I look
So they are
is-
made for lizard
is-
people. Like,
is out.
Absolutely.
It's called fashion.
High fashion.
High fashion.
High fashion, yeah.
Anyways, this week we're talking about Jackie Boy Parsons. His name has always popped up here and there, but we've never took a little dive into him.
What? Legit.
Fucking so cool.
He's cool.
Written out of history. Like
Yeah.
written out
Just
of history.
bullshit.
It's crazy.
No, they named a crater after him on the moon, just like all the other famous
true.
scientists.
Yeah,
except they stuck it
but
on
he's on the dark side.
as
He's on
far
the dark
away
side.
as they could.
Yeah.
yeah, for all the way
It's,
from all the other science.
Yes.
Buddy,
You go far
over
enough
there,
away to
Jack
not get
Parsons.
jizz on them.
Yeah.
yeah.
Not on the moon. I don't know. Like, go pretty far. Slow
This
gravity.
trigger warning. There's going to be lots of talk about ejaculate on today's episode because that's what if Parsons was about anything, right?
We've talked about Crowley before
enjoying
and his
good
sex
time.
magic. There's some overlap here, and it's exactly
Very much
exactly
so.
what you think it's about to be.
Jack Parsons eats ass, for sure.
Oh,
Eats everything.
Oh, yeah.
He's nothing's out of his reach.
So we're talking about
I didn't
Jack
realize
Parsons.
I didn't realize how much I practiced dark magic until I learned about Jack Parsons, to be honest here. I was like, oh shit. You know what? Definitely.
It has not led to riches and fame for you, though.
No.
Not in the slightest.
No.
Well, could you imagine if he hasn't been practicing dark magic?
Where would he be?
So we're talking about Jack Parsons, who is perhaps could be labeled as one of the most influential figures in like rocket science, I suppose.
I don't think they wouldn't have got to the moon without him.
No, I mean, that's probably a
not on that
statement.
Not on that timeline, at least. Like it would have been.
And he's also a very, very interesting personality just himself. Like besides his scientific
but he up there with Hughes, like Howard Hughes, like fucking weird.
He's weirder than that. Howard Hughes was an anti-Semite with a mental illness that caused him to fucking piss in jugs and grow his
L. Ron Hubbard met this guy and was like, whoa. Yo.
So, and there's definitely
I gotta make a religion based on this guy.
So a lot of Jack Parsons' more personal endeavors probably overshadow a lot of his scientific endeavors, but we'll get to all of that in due course. Now, Jack Parsons was who was he born? John Parsons? Or no, sorry, his name was Marvel.
Dope. It's a great name.
Marvel. Marvel.
Great name.
Whiteside Parsons. Yeah, it's a great name. He was born October 2nd, 1914. And he was born in, the City of Angels, Los Angeles. And he was kind of, I guess,
he was born
at the time.
He was born in the wrong city then.
Well, I don't know. So Los Angeles at that time, and most people know, like during the early 1900s, this was kind of the whole, I guess, like the rising of the New Age spiritualism, after you had
a hub for it.
Like after World War I, you had a lot of people kind of going into these new religions and stuff like this, and stuff spreading out, spiritualism, people reaching out to the dead and want to bring you back and finding new ways to contact into the afterlife and move to these things. And like Parsons was brought into the world right in the middle of all of that because Los Angeles was one of the hubs for that kind of activity.
It makes sense though when you have like a city, especially at that time, still it was huge with a big ass population like that. Like there's people coming from all different cultures, feel alienated, and they're looking for group activities and stuff like that. They're looking for something to give them a purpose, right? So you see all these like-minded weirdos that get together and start worshiping Satan.
Well, Satan and probably a lot of other ancient and also like probably amalgamated deities of all of these kind of spiritual practices. So yeah, like you have a lot of immigrant population and Western culture kind of mishmashing all together in here, and then you also kind of have you're going into the 1920s where it is the Roaring 20s. So there is a bit of kind of a sexual liberation kind of going on about this, which is linked to the occult. So it's I
don't think there's any kind of coincidence here that we're talking about like New Age spiritualism, all this like sex movement, sex cult, and we got a young Bull Zell here wearing his fucking pineapple swinger shirt tonight, letting everyone know. Right? What's going on with this shit? Isn't that it's the international sign for swingers?
No, is it? No, upside down pineapple on your door is the sign for swingers.
Is it?
A pineapple shirt of all kinds. It can be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, okay. All right.
It's your own meaning. It's behind the shirt.
All right.
This is news to me. I don't really?
I'm going to be selling these as part of my cult shirt.
All right. Oh, yeah. The sex cult.
They're laced with LSD. When you put them on, you don't realize.
What?
And that's how you get people to join.
I don't even know if that is how it works.
You can absorb through your skin for sure. I don't know if a shirt would be
the shirts will be made of LSD.
Trying to attract some pine thruples.
Yeah, if you're
be more of a hat. You gotta get on the temple or something.
Oh,
bandana.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, take off your hat, your hair kind of looks like the top of a pineapple. So you just go upside down. And you're fucking.
That's not enough. There are not enough spikes up there. Fortunately,
there's few. Well, that's how you know they're ripe. You pull on it, and one comes off. It's ready to go.
Zell's ready. This bowl is ripe.
Jack Parsons.
So, yes. So Ruth Parsons, Jack's mother, would eventually change his name to John after a bitter divorce with his father after she accused him of adultery, finding that he had made a number of trips to the local brothels, probably multiple brothels, like during her pregnancy. And so after the finalization of that divorce, Ruth took John and then moved to Pasadena, where they went to go on to live with her maternal grandparents, her grandparents, who were fairly well off at the time.
That's some dollars.
Well, this kid, he'd roll up to his new school looking like fucking Richie Rich in the limo. Wow. More like Pugsley Adams, I guess. Fucking Richie Rich. But so he's getting dropped off in a limo every day. He's getting beat up fucking regularly. His daily allowance was $20. And this is a time when the like fucking average wage was about 26 cents.
Yeah.
Right. So this kid's brand new school, looking like an asshole. He's getting beat up regularly until fucking Ed Foreman comes to his rescue, breaks a bully's nose, and I'm sure calls him a dumbass after. But
like Ruth's parents or John's grandparents were both like they accumulated their wealth after they had a manufacturing and like tied up a manufacturing business, which left them quite well off. And so they had
want for anything.
Yeah, they had good money, and so he really had the chance to kind of like get into some of this stuff and indulge in a lot of the things like reading and literature, which kind of comforted him in his times of being bullied and isolated, like Andrew already mentioned. Like, you know, if you're gonna get beat up, and you know he's a little bit of a nerdy kid. Like he's not like super strong, not super athletic. I think there's some anecdotes about him being considered like a bit effeminate. So, you know, that made him a target for bullying. And then he indulged in his passions of reading, which were encouraged by his grandmother, who introduced him to, classic science fiction, early science fiction writers like Jules Verne. And he also enjoyed since they were rich, I mean, they probably had a subscription, or he was able to buy like the early issues of the pulp magazine Amazing Stories, which, if people are familiar with that, like Amazing Stories is one of the places where you had like the very first like writings of some of the most popular sci-fi writers now, like as Isaac Asimov, Ursula K. Le Guin, Roger Zelazny. Not at that time, but like these were still like stories that your science fiction, rocket ships, lasers.
He was
Martians,
a well-read,
all that stuff.
Feminine nerd. Story. Summarizing. Yeah, he's a fucking nerd. All right.
Yeah. So he would go on to grow up, in this life of privilege, and also being able to kind of just read anything that he wants, and then going into those, going into that stuff, he was able to kind of acquire a taste and an interest in rocketry, modern rocketry, because that's the way things were going. People want to go to the moon, thinking about it.
And the idea of going to the moon then was like fairy tale almost.
Yeah, it's a pipe dream. Rockets were only known in science fiction.
Yeah,
at the time that the physics doesn't add up. Well, you can never get to space. It's impossible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Andrew mentioned before who his childhood companion would be Mr. Edward Foreman. So these two at age 12 were basically building up like backyard rockets in. Like they were putting together like gunpowder. I don't know where they were getting them from.
Is what they're doing.
They're probably getting their grandfathers. Yeah, they're rich.
They're
and
rich.
I think also like the manufacturing. Like I think there was some like gunpowder and also it's the early 1900s. Like you can find gunpowder anywhere. I'm sure
you could probably just buy dynamite as anyone could just buy a stick of dynamite
for sure.
You could buy there's no safety.
Just go down to the Acme
stores. Probably fun. Acme stores.
It's not like it was like. It takes that much. Like you have these guys doing rocks. They probably blew one thing up and it sent something flying into the sky.
Dude,
and they're
kid safety back then. They probably had like my first dynamite kit or something. Safety back then was not an issue.
They blew so much shit up that their nicknames around school became the Powder Monkeys.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's fucking awesome.
So yeah, they were designing things like gunpowder based rockets, like with aluminum foil. They were like cherry bombs, fireworks, and glue. Like put all that stuff together.
Didn't they blow up a shed too? Like early on, like I thought I read that the two of them blew up a shed by accident.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Right?
Yeah.
Then fucking Grandpa Warbucks just rolled up, tossing money at whoever's shed it was. Like, don't worry.
But rocketry was not the only thing that Parsons was interested in. So some of the amazing stories I remember not only dip into science fiction, but also fantasy. And a lot of those had to do with things like the occult. So Parsons Jack would go ahead and start first dabbling with the occult around this time. And there is an anecdote about him. One of the first things that he did was attempting to contact the devil in his bedroom.
Like what I want to understand about this is, well, but like you don't just go straight to the devil. Like how did he, they're so vague around this. Like this kid wasn't listening to fucking Knights in Satan's Service on the record player or listen to Stairway Backwards. Right? Like was he playing a little Ouija first?
This is well before
playing Bloody Mary a few times.
What was the satanic
or
game
you go
of the day?
straight to the devil. Yeah, like that's what I want. Like you don't just go straight.
Straight seance, I guess. Like legit.
I mean, back then, yeah,
Ancient
circles, candles, like that kind of stuff. Probably, it's like. In those, I mean, back then, the amazing stories and stuff, there's always kind of those. I mean, if you read like early H.P. Lovecraft, there's always probably enough description in there to kind of be like, yeah, this might work. It's good enough for Cthulhu. You can get Satan in here. Yeah, sure.
I mean, the interesting thing for me was when I was looking at this, and we'll get into like more of his life further on. But I always kind of wondered, I was like, did at any point in his early life, did he have some success or what he deemed to be some kind of success with the occult or contacting the devil or what he deemed to be spiritual? Because it really pushes the rest of his life. Like when you start to go look, like he kind of chased that avenue along with rockets the rest of his life.
Well, I think the thing that he kind of got mixed, like one of the things I remember reading is the fact that he's like, obviously this is a little bit further on when he's a little bit more successful in his career, but he's basically like, he couldn't understand why he's like, I'm so successful financially and with science. How can I not be successful with magic as well? Like he saw science and magic as the same thing. And I think that's like, we'll get into it later, but that's what attracted him so much to Aleister Crowley.
I think this is where scientists have gone wrong in the modern era. Separating the magic.
This is not the story for that, though. This is, if anything, like everybody that talks about it is an amazing scientist, shitty fucking magician. Shitty fucking
his magic bordered on sex assaults. Like,
nah, I would. So statutory assault for sure.
I mean, as a child, we had all this stuff. Like he is producing. He's a very backyard scientist type of kid, but he was actually just getting so distracted apparently that he was funking out of grade school, and so Parsons' mother actually sent him, like gathered up, and plus I think she also busted him trying to summon Satan as well, and actually sent him to Brown Military Academy for Boys in San Diego in an attempt to kind of straighten him out.
Dude, he's blowing shit up at school. He's fucking trying to summon the devil. Like I can only imagine. Like,
just wait till he gets to this fucking boarding school.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he got to the boarding school and it's like he still was not doing great there. And they actually just got shortly after he got there, got expelled because he was blowing up toilets with cherry bombs.
All the toilets.
Of course. All the toilets.
This is fucking Pugsley Adams.
Yeah. This is like
100%.
He's a walking safety hazard. Like it's just, I don't know. He's blowing stuff up. Like that's all he does. But he's good at it. Like, I mean, the fact that he's still alive, and probably had all his fingers, because there's no mention that he lost. I am surprised that he still has all his limbs as a kid.
He's an expert.
As a child.
Expert at an early age.
Well, no, it's the thing is like with that money comes like a little bit of education about safety. I guarantee you, if he was born in some swamp water, Louisiana place, this guy would have 3 fingers by now, right? You know what I mean? Sorry if you're from backcountry Louisiana.
Sorry if you lost your fingers blowing up dynamite back.
You know what I'm saying?
But from his early times and experience with the backyard explosives and stuff, Parsons did pursue an education in the areas of chemistry and physics. So he chose to enroll in Pasadena Junior College in 1933, hoping to study those subjects and kind of further his knowledge about it. But what happened was, unfortunately, around this time, you had the Great Depression rolling in, and the white side, his grandparents' money started to dwindle. Like they started to, their family finances were drying up, and he was forced to drop out.
You're not here because you're great. You're here because of your money.
He was actually accepted. He would at the time he was accepted to Stanford, but I think he did one semester he was able to do, and he just couldn't continue because they couldn't pay for the tuition. So the thing is Parsons actually was never really great at math, according to most accounts, and that he never earned more than a high school diploma. He never finished college. He ended up never finishing a college degree at any of the universities on the West Coast, plenty of prestigious ones, but he never got that far in his formal education. So
he kind of reminds me of his trajectory and stuff, kind of almost like Bob Lazar before Bob Lazar, you know what I mean? Where this guy, he's really talented in this one area field, but doesn't have the credentials.
Yeah. They called him, one term that is used to refer to his kind of, his talent and stuff is they called him a cookbook chemist. It's just,
he knew what to combine, but didn't know why they worked together.
Yeah, you didn't know you couldn't write it down on paper or tell you how he did it, but he was just okay, this, you put these two together,
a little bit of that, a little bit of this, kaboom.
Just make big bang.
Yeah. So Parsons, lacking the funds to continue his formal education, he was actually forced to take up a working job. So he was working weekends, holidays, and pretty much a full-time employment at Hercules Powder Company, which is, of course, you're going to work at a powder company. What kind of powder? Duh, gunpowder.
Yeah. He was bringing home pockets full every night. Let's not
pretty much that's what it sounds like. So, but this also gave him the opportunity to learn more about the properties of gunpowder and its potential, because they had been experimenting with this in his childhood, in his teens and stuff, to use it as an actual rocket propellant, which wasn't really people weren't really doing that stuff yet. Rocketry was still very much seen as a pipe dream. This is still something that's very much like science fiction. Rockets, what? That's crazy stuff. That's science fiction, nerd stuff. That's not going to happen ever. We're still using propellers and stuff on planes and stuff like that. Jet engines haven't even been invented yet. But so occasionally, yes, he was taking work home with him, and siphon off a couple stuff like that to kind of fund and supply his, and still buddies with Foreman. Him and Foreman were still buds, and they were still pursuing their rocket dreams.
They wwere doing cool shit. They were mixing the gunpowder with glue, right, to keep it together, and trying new shit and getting a little bit of success. Yeah, I remember it was cool. They did their first test rocket launch in the 30s. They did it on Halloween night. And they fucking lit a bunch of shit on fire. And they did it right by this place called the Devil's Dam, where they're from. It was pretty of course, right?
Yeah. I mean, why not? There's lots of places called the Devil's something around.
Yeah, but you had to do it there.
You had to,
right?
Yeah. It's almost as they were summoned. I heard.
So as Parsons, experience with rocketry and his knowledge of, chemical properties and these things grew, also his interest with the occult grew. So in about 1933, Parsons actually turned, he was making some money from his rocket exploits and these things. And he actually turned he moved over to a place on Orange Avenue, and he turned this estate into what was called basically a bohemian haven. He was renting out rooms to artists, occultists, dropouts, everything, every kind of person that would be into that stuff. He was just kind of renting out rooms to, it's basically bringing a little extra money and also kind of get more
Get
of
laid.
that too.
Yeah.
That's probably.
Yeah.
So Foreman and Parsons were together. We're still trying to get they're still trying to get funding for their experiments. They still want to kind of make money, and they still want to progress in their field.
I love that. They're we've been blowing shit up and mixing glue with gunpowder. Will you pay us?
Okay, I mean, yeah, they still wanted to learn, which I think is an important thing. It's they still knew they needed to learn more, I think, and it's they wanted to get into it even more. So they would go to public lectures, they would go to the universities when they had public speakers and stuff on the topics of chemistry, physics, rocketry, any of that kind of engineering, those kinds of things, and they would go and they would attend these lectures and stuff, and learning along the way. And so at one of these, this is where Jack Parsons and Edward Foreman met the PhD candidate Mike Molina. So at a Caltech lecture. And so the two of them would actually manage to, when they talked to Molina and like knew him on a personal level, Molina decided to introduce them to his thesis advisor, who was Dr. Theodore Van Karman. And Theodore Van Karman was like one of the kind of like, he already had like a place, he was like in charge of the university's Guggenheim Aeronautical Laboratory. And
apparently this guy was a massive character. Like he would do the majority of his lectures in German and then realize that he was doing it in German and then just switch to English and not go like retrace his steps whatsoever.
Right?
Be like, hey, if you didn't get it, you didn't fucking get it. Like,
too bad.
Suck it.
And so,
Scheiße.
I'm not going back. Like, when they got along with, like Carmen, like when Carmen came on the scene, like he liked Parsons, like him and Parsons got along, and even Parsons like occultic stuff, like Carmen kind of enjoyed. He kind of, I think one of the ways he'd refer to him as a delightful screwball, like is kind of like he's a great science. He's like, oh, he's a great scientist, engineer, like huge talent and whatever. And it's like all that other stuff that he knew that stuff was going on. His kind of interest in the occult and the things that, he was doing some of that stuff at work, like. But
that was like normal in those times, right? Like they on Caltech's like fucking campus, they had a fucking ancient Egyptian style like temple where people would go and do occult practices, after dark and shit like that. Like this was kind of a common theme for this time.
So the cool days,
especially with intellectuals. Yeah.
And the other thing that I kind of feel like in this era and like that kind of reached into later eras too, is like there was some appreciation for like the cowboy scientists, like the scientists who was like willing to kind of, just push the envelope, do these things where you're
I think it's more like they didn't know any better.
Yeah, well, but no, exactly. But so they're like, this guy's doing these things. We like, look at these explosions. We've never seen anything like it.
Technically, OSHA didn't even exist back then. Like, there was still like the Department of Labor, but OSHA was not a thing until like the 70s.
Nobody's reaming Wemyss. Nobody's got any Wemyss manuals.
Nobody's wearing hard hats. Nobody's wearing goggles. Nobody cares.
Had you give this guy, in another 20 years, this is the same guy who's like fucking keeping the nuclear fucking spheres apart with chopsticks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just cowboying it. Like that's the kind of guy this guy is, like Parsons.
So they got access to, onto the campus to kind of do most of their experiments. And some of these experiments got like increasingly violent, and like their explosions just got bigger and better, I suppose, as they're going. And it like it got to the point where people like recognized these guys on sight, and they started calling them, or they gave them the nickname the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, there was like no doubt in their minds that they were gonna fucking die in an absolutely epic explosion on campus.
So it's interesting too, because around this time, so he's starting to kind of partner up at Caltech, and this is kind of where he gets his first taste of stardom, right? He gets this is where he gets popular, because he actually gets called to court and appears as an expert explosive witness in a trial of Police Captain Earl Kynette. He was the head of police intelligence in Los Angeles, and he was accused of conspiring to set a car bomb in an attempt to murder of a private investigator named Harry Raymond, a former LAPD detective who was fired after whistleblowing against the police corruption.
Yeah. And he remade the bomb.
Yeah, and Parsons completely remade the bomb, showed how it would have went off and what happened, and literally led to Kynette going to jail. He got convicted to 10 years.
Jeez.
Like a police chief. He
Parsons' interests include rocketry and justice.
Yeah, and dude, you see the newspaper clippings, and he's looking like he's got that cool little Gomez Adams mustache.
Oh yeah, dude, and a police chief that would have garnered huge media attention at the time. They're like, oh, and there's this Caltech student here being an expert, right? You know what I mean? Like that would have gained him some kind of notoriety, like around campus and his peers, like 100% going to his head.
Yeah, Parsons is becoming a bit of a rock star around the campus, even though he doesn't formally attend the campus. Like he doesn't attend the campus. He just kind of comes in there and blows stuff up. Like he's
a dropout. I don't even think he has a high school education.
No, he doesn't have a high school diploma.
Like he's
I think that there's one anecdote that's pretty funny. It's like they talk about how like there was one of the many, but there was a very like sizable explosion at one point that left like a visible crater at some point, like outside one of the buildings. And they used to call it Jack Parsons parking spot. And it's like, that's awesome. just like everybody knew the guy and knew who he was. And it was just kind of like, getting a little bit famous.
Well, it's hard not to know the kid that's walking around campus just charred, like smoking.
And you're just hearing it like constantly
fucking sticking up.
Boom. Like get out of the fucking thing. Oh, Jesus. So in 1935, Parsons actually married his high school sweetheart, Helen Northrup. Right. But the marriage didn't last very long.
Why not?
So apparently his wife, Helen, went on vacation in 1941 with her mother. And when they returned, they found Sarah, her 17-year-old sister, wearing all her clothes. And when she walked in, she's like, yeah, I'm Jack's wife now. You can beat it. And then Jack's refusing to talk to her. So he writes her a letter and he's like, yeah, so long story short, I find you're great. Everything about you is better than your sister, but I find her a little bit more sexually, appealing. So yeah, this is
it's not going to work out with this.
So,
and you got to remember at this time too, this is like, he's in a house full of like all these people that are kind of practicing the cult. So he was kind of like egged on, and this was kind of cheerleaded on by like everyone he was with. And like, because the 17-year-old sister was kind of like obviously young and impressionable, was kind of like talking the talk, walking the walk. They were like, Hail
Satan, eat my ass. Let's go.
Yeah. Right.
Well, we're going to get into it now, but do as thou wilt.
Yeah. Do as thou wilt.
We've mentioned this before. Back case file.
Mr. Crowley.
Pre 100, I believe, Mr. Crowley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going back a little bit, you have in 1938 is the first time that Jack Parsons would encounter the teachings of one Aleister Crowley, who was the leader of the Thelema. Was it Thelemic cult?
Thelemic religion? Yeah.
Thelemic religion, also known as the world's wickedest man.
Yes, also the
Beast 666, the guy that ate human shit with a fork and knife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's got his own. He's got his own quirks. You could say.
That's him. I'd say quirky guy, eccentric. Very much.
Eating shit's not illegal. If you want to eat shit,
yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, just because it's not illegal doesn't mean
I wouldn't advise it. It's probably not something.
It's not illegal.
Not illegal. But listen,
no, you're true.
Not to sidetrack too badly, but he was famously said on his deathbed, he's like, sometimes I hate myself. And I like to think that he had a flashback to the time that he ate shit with a fork and knife.
I guarantee.
And that's why he ate himself.
It ruined the rest of his life when he thought that.
100%. Yes, that's why it is. That's why he said that.
Yeah, it has to be.
At this point, Parsons was making a good chunk of change. Like they were getting a couple of contracts from, I think they had 1 or 2 government contracts that are kind of coming through and with their developments and what they're doing. And so he ended up purchasing a large house on South Orange Grove Avenue in Pasadena. And then this is where he created a little commune. This is where he brought in more actresses. This is where shit went down. This is where they ate shit. Yeah. Maybe that's not confirmed.
Well, he's like, this is where it really starts to like amp up the sex magic and stuff. Like
super.
He's like one of those guys now where it's like he's like
blood sugar sex magic.
Every time you orgasm is like you just got to focus on what you want during that orgasm, and it comes true. And
so it's like The Secret, but with jizz.
Yeah, I'm like reading this, and I'm like, there's no way this guy did not come in the rocket fuel.
No.
Right? Like, can we all agree on that?
It was during
the glue wasn't working, so he started using jizz.
It's so funny. Listen to him, is just like became a chronic masturbator, like constantly, like just like to the moon, to the moon, to the moon.
He's just mixing chemicals.
To the moon, to the moon, to the moon.
He's just mixing chemicals.
Oh yeah, but what constitutes a chronic masturbator?
Yeah, what's considered a chronic?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think not just.
It's probably a scientific.
If you masturbate enough that your dreams come true, you've got some problems.
No, you got good. I don't think that at all. If your dreams are coming true,
if your dreams are coming true, you've mastered that religion. In those few seconds of orgasm, you can summon some black magic spells and do I don't know, whatever.
You can alter reality.
I'd argue all our dreams come true for about fucking 10 to 15 seconds until we look at what we were watching and shut it off. Yeah.
I'm disgusted.
I've just started chanting Lotto Max
I'm a piece of
from
shit.
now on. I started yesterday.
Lotto Max.
Sometimes I hate myself.
Lotto Max, Lotto Max, Lotto Max, Lotto Max, Lotto Max. So we'll see. If all of a sudden I'm off the show and you see a Lotto Max winner, it works. Try it.
Yeah, right, buddy. If you won the lottery, you would just do the show bigger.
Yeah, I would.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I'd
I'd be there with all my money.
Parsons Place would become the place to be. You had all of these popular, and it wasn't just for like people from Caltech. It was like everybody. So you had, famous actresses, poets, writers, and even though it said that like writers like sci-fi master Robert Heinlein, the writer of Starship Troopers, and also, apparently would show up sometimes. And if you've read some of Heinlein's like later stuff, it makes a lot of sense. Like some of his stuff's like really, like stuff we'll get to later. It's like, I was like, wait, fuck, did he get it from this shit? Cause this is crazy. But it was so infamous at the time that, Parsons actually named it the Parsonage. Like that's, you come fucking party at the Parsonage, and so there are stories about how the police were frequent visitors to the Parsonage and that they would receive all these reports of pretty much like, things like naked pregnant women dancing through the fires of the garden.
Hoops.
Yeah. Fucking blasting music out there. And then, people consuming substances that may or may not be illegal. Hallucinogenic. I don't know.
They weren't illegal back then. Back then, everything was open game, pretty much, except for alcohol.
It wasn't illegal.
You couldn't drink alcohol.
Illegal.
Alcohol was the most illegal drug.
Buddy, they were brewing their own absinthe back then.
With the wormwood, with the good shit too, though, like the real absinthe.
And like the best part of these stories is like that Parsons is always at the door greeting these police when they would show up. And then he'd be like, I'm a respected Caltech scientist. There's nothing undue coming on around here. No. I just been twirling his little mustache and being like, there's no cause for alarm. I know what I'm doing. I'm a scientist.
This is part of my research.
Yeah. Just science.
Naked.
Yeah.
Just in a lab coat.
He's got his lab coat with like
Just
nothing, just
rock
junk
hard.
hanging out. Just junk hanging out. Yeah, just like, yeah. I assure you, officer, nothing untoward is happening on this property. But thank you for your concern. Have a good night. Yes. Mm-hmm, yes. So you had like him, doing well, I suppose, up until then. You have all this stuff kind of going on. And like, not only was he being taken notice in social circles, but also his advances and his experiments were actually getting the notice of like static, or actually like they were getting the big contract money, right? Because one of their experiments was they were actually testing like a static motor rocket that could run for over a minute, which was like unheard of at that time. That was something that like did not happen. And that this specific rocket, and this is why this is one of the reasons that Jack Parsons is considered one of the fathers of rocketry, and maybe one of the reasons that we got to the moon is that solid fuel rocket would actually become the basis of things like the Minuteman missile, the Titan rocket, and the space shuttle solid rocket booster. And those are the things that basically got us out.
How does that stuff
through
work?
the atmosphere and out?
Because he made like the original jet fuel, like the liquid compressed fuel, right? But then also the solid fuel. How does that one fucking work? That one's crazy.
So his whole thing was apparently like they were using like liquid at first, I believe, and like powder and then liquid, and they were trying to figure out a way and like how to kind of like it didn't work because like if you put the liquid in there, like transporting it became logistically it became a problem. And it said that Jack Parsons actually had like a eureka moment, an epiphany, where he thought about actually
he made orgasm. He's stroking in the morning.
Yeah.
He's like, it's got to be solid.
That's likely. And he thought about the idea of the ancient Mesopotamian, weapon, the Greek fire.
He was actually watching people put asphalt on a roof. And that's where he kind of, the little light bulb fucking turned on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so he thought about how, he watched the people putting out asphalt like that. And then also thinking about Greek fire and how they use that. And he thought like, hey, what if we just find the right amount of, make something gooey enough that it kind of like all sticks together, but still burns. right? And then he figured out that you can.
I don't believe he saw that. I think he came in a coffee can of his own fucking rocket fuel, and then it started to coagulate, and he's like, "Whoa!"
So I don't think that,
Look at
but
that.
I think to touch back on what Braden was kind of saying earlier is the interesting thing about the fact that it was Greek fire that inspired this to him, and like shit that was used in the Byzantine Empire to take out other ships.
I didn't
Like
say
the
any
fire
of
would
that.
burn on water. It's like basically what inspired wildfire from Game of Thrones, to put it in perspective.
Wizard's fire.
And one of the, pardon?
Was it Wizard's fire or was it wildfire?
Yeah.
I thought it was wildfire.
Wildfire.
But the reason why I bring that up is because one of the interesting things about Greek fire is the fact that it's been used throughout history and nobody knows what it was made of or how it was made.
Well, exactly what it was made of. Like we don't.
They don't know.
Sure.
Some people think maybe it was ancient napalm, something like that, but nobody really knows where it came from. So it makes me wonder, maybe this was due to a successful fucking ritual. Maybe this is what he fucking asked the devil to fucking give him the secret knowledge of.
Give me the next fuel, the next.
This changed the future of rocket technology. Right? Like this product that he created was 400 times more powerful than the last one, the Galcitrit 53 or whatever that they came up with. Right? Like this was fucking revolutionary. Like the government came to these guys after Pearl Harbor and was like, hey, listen, we need close quarter takeoffs in combat zones. We can't use these giant fucking runways. They're not practical. Can you guys fix this? And Jack Parsons is like, fucking boom, here you go.
Yeah.
Bingo, bango, bongo. Problem fucking solved. Why?
Satan. All good things come from
sold
Satan.
the soul. Well, I mean, why not? Like, if he was trying to summon the devil, like, you think maybe he was making pacts too, like of trying to like sell his soul for this kind of knowledge or something, right? That
you look at this guy's life after this.
After this moment.
After he created this, let's look at his fucking life.
Right,
and it's like any other pact with the devil.
Right, we're going to look at his life, but we're going to take a short beer break here. Take a pee. We're going to be right back.
We're back.
We're back. So as Parsons' rocketry exploits and career is taking off, so is his occult life as well. He is rising into the ranks of the Ordo Templi Orientis, which was like the California chapter of like Crowley's bunch. Yeah.
Well, and he's like rubbing elbows with like L. Ron Hubbard and like.
Well, not yet.
I thought he was at this point.
You're getting
We're
too crazy
getting there.
You're jumping. Yeah.
I actually thought he was already. So
No,
my mistake. I thought at this point he was already had started.
No, he just started the OTO, which is this is the thing that was founded by Drake, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly. So after he got into the OTO, it's like they became like the Agape Lodge is like one of the places that's mentioned, and this is where Parsons saw like his personality and his intelligence kind of rose him through the ranks of that area, like that chapter of the OTO. And so he began personal correspondence with Crowley and then kind of became like his de facto representative for the OTO in, I guess, in California.
Which makes sense because when you look at like the situation for Crowley is he's kind of on a little bit of a downward spiral.
He's eating
like
shit.
Things are kind of like, exactly. He's eating shit. It's not,
Everything's downhill
things
from
aren't
there.
going well for him. And then all of a sudden this fucking American rock star, right, who's rich and famous, is starting to pick up his practices. Of course, you're going to make him the figurehead of your movement out there, right? Like that's kind of,
it adds so much
cash cow.
credibility to you because this guy's like getting these government contracts. He's like
He's
revolutionizing
he's
rockets.
rich, he's
and
famous,
and he's jerking off in the name of Odo.
Filthy
right?
rich.
yeah,
he's making good money.
sexy.
That mustache really fucking sells him in a nice light.
He's fucking good looking.
Got the mad scientist hair. Like,
Maybe I should do that. Hey,
You can do the straight stash like that.
Yeah, I probably could.
Yeah, you just got to shave it straight. That's the secret. You can't let it curve around the lip. You have to have this go perfectly out.
I gotta look into that.
So by 41, Parsons and his, the Suicide Squad club had kind of demonstrated the functionality of what is now called jet assisted takeoff, so JATO, which is what they're probably best known for. Essentially, like if you watch videos now, like pretty much the only video when you look it up is always the one. It's like a C-130 with a bunch of like rockets taped to the back, and it just like lifts off like goes vertical in like 5 seconds. It's cool. It's super neat. And you see it all the time, but it's just like, it's just that's the only way you see it kind of now. It's just like on those big C-130s. And like, if you got limited space, you're just like hitting these. I don't know what it feels like when you do that, because it must be crazy. You're just like hit the jets like fucking crazy.
Oh, yeah. I bet you're sucked back into that seat, baby. And cheese coming off that.
So the military was pretty much impressed by this idea and this concept. So they kind of they paid them a whole bunch of money and they funded them. Like the U.S. Air Force put in a huge order with them. And for 1942, in order to meet that demand, Parsons and everybody who was kind of, that's like Von Karman and Foreman, I think still at this point, they formed the Aerojet Engineering Corporation. So this is when you would see and then just a year later, the military would end up taking over operations of the Galset, which was like the Guggenheim aeronautics part of the thing, that like they would actually take over
where
that.
They got started. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they would rename it to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, but don't let Jet Propulsion Laboratory fool you, because that's not exactly what they were doing. So apparently like
the Parsons Laboratory is what it stands for.
Well, but also kind of, it's what everybody thought it stood for.
In his mind, for sure.
Right. But the jet propulsion Labs part actually was like a bit of marketing for them, because it's still at this point, like I mentioned before, like rocketry was still something that wasn't really like considered,
it was scoffed
like a legit pursuit. Yeah. Like jet engines were the thing. Like jet engines was still up and coming, but like an engine, not like an actual rocket. Rockets were kind of like falling by the wayside in terms
never
of like
get to
interest
space.
They're like, we need jets. We need engines. Like, we need that. That's what we need. We're not going to the moon. Who wants to go to the moon? We got to fight Nazis and communists and stuff. Like, that's what we got to do.
We need a jet over to Europe.
At this point, now that they're getting all of this funding and the government has become heavily involved in these projects, it kind of becomes a liability. It becomes a bit of a problem about Parsons' like personal exploits, like his stuff that's kind of going on outside of the JPL.
Because he's going around regular inviting staff to come over to the parsonage.
The parsonage, what a name.
Participate in getting high on fucking meth and bang.
Yeah.
Like literally, like he was super open about it. And I think like a lot of times, right, like we're used to eccentric, smart people having like weird quirks and stuff like that. Like that's pretty normal, right? Like Dan goes to Thailand, nobody bets an eye. Like,
he's doing something over there. He's having fun.
We don't need to know, right? Yeah. He's having a good time. But this got like way too extreme to the point where they're like, okay, he's in the media. He's fucking everywhere. He's too famous.
Like, cops are going to his place on the regular, people showing up, all kinds of, it's in probably the local news, like he
shows up, he buys his house
every week.
He probably buys his house. It's a nice neighborhood. All the neighbors are pretty respectable, and he's just throwing massive orgy parties and
and the cops show up and he's pretending he's fucking Steven Seagal above the law. And they're like, listen, you gotta fucking simmer down.
Waving his hands around.
You want to see some magic? Yeah, I'll show you, boy.
Show you some magic. Magic your head up your ass. And now as we're moving into the era of politics and stuff like that, where it becomes a problem that you're kind of moving outside the norm. So all of these ideas and these practices that Parsons is kind of putting out there, and these things, usually you have things like hedonism and Satan worship. These are also back and then culturally are closely linked to, things like Marxism and communism. These are things that you don't want anywhere near your government contract,
the bad isms,
near your government money.
Negative isms.
One, it's like, I'm sure they were like, Hitler's into this stuff too. And they're like, who's this guy? What's he doing?
Well, they both love speed. Yeah. So,
and like we said, like Parsons is now becoming heavily engaged in, like drug consumption, right? He's taking his popping cocaine, methamphetamines, opiates, everything, all that stuff that goes along with that.
Hail Satan sober.
That fast lane, Satan worshiping lifestyle, as all of that stuff goes with it. And so he's now kind of pushing all of that stuff as well. So now 1945 comes around and his occult status starts getting starts to kind of like come more into prominence, starts overtaking like his scientific endeavors. Like here, this is when stuff like, you're like, okay, you're maybe moving away from all that really cool stuff.
How many years after? How many years after the initial sale to the devil is this happening now? Did he get like 10 good years and now it's over and now he's...
I mean,
he came up with the
first time
the new technology in 41, and this is 45. So 4 years after.
Yeah,
okay, maybe he's coming to an end. We're going to find out when he dies, and that will be the true end of his contract.
Well, I mean, no, because I would argue that like this guy peaks, and he has a fast decline where he lives a pretty rough life for a while. But we'll get into
it's actually not that long. It's pretty rapid.
Yeah, I guess so.
End of the contract.
Yeah, his occult workings and everything ends up leading him into the same circles as L. Ron Hubbard, founder of Scientology. These two guys hang out together, like they strike up a friendship, like, and they start
videotape each other.
They had videotape back then, probably.
Parsons described.
He videotaped L. Ron Hubbard at one point, like videotapes him masturbating, doing rituals, like sex rituals.
Well, yeah. So basically, like when they first met, Parsons described him as the most thelemic. Is that how you say it? Thelemic. The most thelemic person he's ever met, despite Hubbard never even practicing magic, is what they called the practice of philemia or whatever the fuck, right? Yeah. So he was kind of enamored by Hubbard right off the beginning. They would fence in his, in the front room of the parsonage. They were like really good buddies, getting high together, doing crazy shit. But pretty quickly, fucking Parsons' child bride, Sarah, started noticing Hubbard, and then they started, do as thou wilt, right? There's no connections there, right? Like you're allowed to be promiscuous. So Hubbard and Sarah start engaging, in sexual acts, and they're doing it in front of Parsons on a regular basis. And Parsons is really starting to fucking get pissed off by this. He's not enjoying it. He's not happy. So Parsons decides, he's like, okay, like that's bad. That's the end of my fucking road with her. I'm going to start focusing on what we're going to get into soon as the Babylon working. He's going to be summoning the whore of Babylon. And he starts working on this ritual, but it's not really taking off yet. He's trying different things. He's coming on different shit.
Hey, it's the same ritual we all did when we were about 13, 14. I wish I had a lady to do this. I wish I had a lady. I wish I had a lady.
Jerking off till nothing comes out.
To the moon. To the moon.
So he's basically began a series of rituals based on Enochian magic, which is the angels speak, if I remember correctly, during which he masturbated onto magical tablets, accompanied by Sergei Prokofiev, the second concerto, Russian fucking violinist. And that practice was described as Babylon working. So how L. Ron Hubbard comes back into the fucking mix is while he's been participating in these rituals, he hears this loud scream come from the kitchen and all the power goes out in the house. So fucking Parsons runs out of the house with his fucking dagger because he's like, I must have fucking summoned something, right? Like I gotta go. And he comes out and he sees L. Ron Hubbard curled up in a little ball in the kitchen, kind of shaking. And he's like, well, what's going on? And then he looks up and he sees this big 6-foot fucking yellow and brown light above L. Ron Hubbard. And then he realizes, he's like, oh my God, like L. Ron Hubbard is connected spiritually. He's very sensitive. Like I need him for these fucking rituals. So from then on, he brings L. Ron Hubbard on as a fucking scribe to watch him fucking stroking it on these magical tablets.
Yeah.
And soon, unfortunately, he realizes that he's got a limited supply of spooge, right? So he starts using his own blood. So I guess any type of bodily fluid will work.
I feel like blood would even work better.
Probably.
And that's why we want to ask all the Patreon supporters. I've got some magic tablets in the back, and I need you all to witness something.
They only work if it's witnessed.
Alien Theorists OnlyFans to help me witness my magical summonings.
He will wear those glasses the whole time.
So
To the moon.
So they worked on this relentlessly. They worked on it. They had fucking Hubbard scribe. They're going towards us. They're focused in on the Babylon working. It was apparently inspired by Crowley's novel Moonchild. So he wanted to magically fertilize an egg. So basically like an immaculate conception. And their final ritual took place in the Mojave Desert in late February of 1946, during which Parsons abruptly decided that his undertaking was complete. So he's like, it's done. We solved it. On returning to the parsonage, he discovered that Marjorie Cameron, an unemployed illustrator and former Navy officer, supposedly, had come to visit, believing her to be the elemental woman and a manifestation of the Whore of Babylon that he had invoked. So he thinks that his ritual, Babylon working, was successful and brought forth his Scarlet Woman. And that's what he referred to as, right? And I find this fucking hilarious because we all know L. Ron Hubbard.
Shyster.
Massive piece of shit.
Yeah.
Worst person humanly possible to get into business with. They actually, so after this, they press L. Ron Hubbard when he's getting into Scientology about this. And they're like, so like, what the fuck, man? Like, tell us about this OTO stuff. Tell us about Jack Parsons. And he takes a stance after this that he was actually enlisted by the Navy to work as an undercover agent, to go undercover and rescue a fucking woman from, the deep, dark fucking spiritual world of the OTO and Jack Parsons. And that's why he rescues Sarah and ends up marrying her. But yeah, I thought that was fucking hilarious.
Yeah,
I'm
and
just
so
videotaping him nonstop. He's like, God damn.
And
Did
you know
get that? And he's like, yeah, I got it.
You know your shit has to be fucked when you're actually like, so Parsons ends up writing to Crowley about his Babylon working, like all of his like information and the stuff that he's been putting down on paper and like sending it to Crowley for kind of like critique and approval. And like Crowley was harsh on it, apparently. Like he was like, when he was telling Parsons, what do you even know what the fuck you're doing? Kind of essentially, he's like, you don't understand anything about this ritual or the dangers of what you're doing. You don't
even know Thelema. You have no idea.
You're gonna you're messing with forces that you don't understand.
Did you even eat human shit?
Yeah. Did you eat shit? No. Get the fuck out of here.
You're just out here coming on tablets.
Nah.
Fucking Bush League.
But I mean, you have to
Get
imagine
back to
like,
when you eat poop.
somebody like Parsons is probably like crushed. It's like, oh, my my idol
sure.
Crowley is like telling me like I'm a giant piece of shit and I don't know anything. Like, oh, it's sad. But he gets it done, and and as he draws forth his elemental woman, Marjorie Campbell, and they begin their romantic relationship. So
my favorite part about this too is they're practicing super like intimate sex magic, worshiping all this stuff. Cause this is a Scarlet Woman. This is everything that he wanted.
They're still doing these sex. I think there's like
there
rituals that are going on at the same time, right? Like the OTO has their own rituals, which they're sex parties. Like I don't know.
There was one of the things he was talking about is like they would have ritual sex where like he would chant his dreams and his wishes until he orgasmed.
To the moon, to the moon, to the moon.
And the best part about that is like that's the shit that's going on this entire time. Marjorie Cameron just thinks they're having sex.
Yeah.
And she doesn't need like, why the fuck is this guy doing like
Why
this
does
is
he keep chanting
shit.
to the moon?
I'm going into it, but like it's weird. Yeah. Is that a safe word? Like I don't know.
Yeah, with no prior information, it'd be a very interesting situation to be in.
But she just goes with it.
I guess
Apparently she was there initially to talk about her UFO experiences that she had, oddly enough, not to get off on too much of a tangent, but she apparently saw like cigar-shaped saucers and she wanted to talk to the fucking Rocket Man about it. But,
Well, I mean,
that's interesting.
we can
That's
talk about
early.
it
That's early in
while
the
we're doing
UFO lore.
yeah.
Now, even before the Babylon working rituals, like Parsons and Hubbard's relationship was kind of becoming, like we already kind of talked about it, like it was already becoming a little bit strained with like a part of the Hubbard's relationship with Northrop and these things. But all three of them had decided, previously to form a company called Allied Enterprises, with Parsons investing a large portion of his savings, because at this point, like the money was a bit drying up. Like I think at this point they'd actually Parsons had sold.
People are starting to distance themselves from Parsons at this point already.
Well, he lost his security clearance, right? He got fired because he had connections with Marxists.
Yeah,
he worked at Caltech.
Yeah, and he's hanging out with this guy who eats shit.
Yeah, and he was kind of forced into selling his shares of Aerojet. Like they kind of forced him out of the company, kind of being like, we can't have this. We'll pay you off, and they just okay.
He gives all this money to L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah, pretty much.
To start up a boat by himself. I think I've heard this story before.
This plan sounds like the absolutely craziest thing. So, are
we talking about Tom Cruise here? Like, what are you doing?
So it sounds like a wild plan. Like, did people do this? Is this like a successful business thing? So
some type of fucking Ponzi scheme?
Yeah. So their plan with Allied Enterprises was they were going to buy yachts on the East Coast, and then they would sail them to the West Coast, and then they would sell them there for profit.
So maybe the idea was that the money was on the West Coast right now with movie stars and this kind of things, and that they could buy them cheap, do the work, the labor of getting them to but it seems like a wild idea.
Well, I mean that's crazy because that's before Panama Canal, right? So that's or is that right? Maybe they're right around the same time. Because if there's no canal, you got to go all the way through around the bottom of fucking South America. That would be a massive journey. I guess that's how you save the money. They're like, we're not shipping to the West Coast.
Maybe that's why it just never fucking happened.
Yeah. Well, that's true.
Well, that or the fact that, instead of going through with the entire thing, Hubbard and Northrop pretty much took off with the majority of the funding that Parsons provided and just started fucking on them boats, I guess. That seems like what they did. I just said, fuck you.
All right. The canal was completed in 1914, so we're well within the canal.
Yeah, I was like, Theodore Roosevelt. I usually built that.
So they fucked off with all his money, but supposedly Parsons tracked them down to Miami. And when he got there, he filed some type of court injunction that kind of made them landlocked on the boat. They weren't allowed to set sail until they figured out the dispute. Well, Hubbard being Hubbard decides, fuck you. You can't hold me. I'm a Scientologist, right? Only Xenu or whatever the fuck can hold me. Yeah. So he hops on his boat, goes to take off. Somebody calls Parsons and says, hey, listen, the boat left. They're leaving. So Parsons in his hotel room draws a pentagram, summons a fucking demon. And you know what happens?
Fucks the demon.
The boat crashes. Oh. The boat.
Well, he probably
fucks the demon. Fuck the demon. Make the boat
probably
crash.
did fuck the demon. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then the boat crashed.
Yeah.
And then they were forced to come back ashore. And Parsons got some of
by this point, he's mastered the art of the sex magic and in orgasm. He cast a spell.
He's like, crash the boat, 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 crash the boat. I love that idea. He's frantically drawing. Come on, crash the boat, crash the boat, crash the boat.
And he's fucking pulling it so often that it takes him fucking half an hour to get it.
He's got the death grip. He's like,
yeah, just sand shoots out.
There's knocks. Housekeeping. Not now. Come back later.
That's 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes. But at the end of this, apparently they would reach an out-of-court settlement where Parsons was repaid a portion of what he invested, but way off the amount that he originally.
So he invested like $350,000 and he got $3,000 back.
That's it. He got like
straight fucked. Not in a good way. He's probably like, fucking nah.
Yeah, got 1% back of what he put in. Brutal.
So at this point, this is post Babylon working, whatever. Parsons, he's reached the apex of his rocketry career and he's kind of starting to go downhill at this point. like this is kind of seen like the whole falling out with Hubbard and the conclusion of that saga is usually seen as the time when Parsons' life starts to kind of like derail. Parsons ends up like he doesn't have any money at this point, or not as much money as he had before. Like, you know, he's making good all that contract money, all that government contract money. Now he's not got any of that. So Parsons has to go ahead and take like kind of odd jobs, and you know, some of these things are like repairing washing machines or designing
pumping gas,
designing pyrotechnics for Hollywood movies. And then I think he actually secured a contract later as a chemical researcher for Hughes Aerospace, like that Howard Hughes, like that guy.
Yeah, they were working on the SM-46 Navajo missile project.
So,
but unfortunately, he was entertaining other offers at the same time,
playing the field,
which kind of fucks him over. So Hughes contracted him to write up a proposal for a chemical plant to be used for Hughes' own rocket program, but at the same time, Parsons is in negotiations with the newly formed Israeli government, or Israel itself, and they kind of asked for a similar proposal on a chemical plant of their own. So Parsons kind of takes a little bit of the stuff that he's already submitted to Hughes and goes, well, a lot of this, I've already worked on a lot of the stuff that they're asking for. So goes to his secretary and it's like, hey, can you fucking type all this shit up for me, please? And then she realizes she's retyping up fucking, you know, top secret shit and was like, this is weird. Like I need to fucking move this upstairs, right?
One of the things I read about that was that the FBI actually got involved because they actually thought, and their main concern was that this guy was perhaps like, you know, and especially the height of the Cold War. They're like, this guy's a Russian spy, right? He's Kremlin spy. And so they like approached him and he went in as soon as he heard that the FBI was involved, went and had a meeting with them. They're like, this is our concerns. He goes, I am not a Russian spy. I'm gathering this information that I've worked on for this company, Top Secret. It's my information. I worked on it. And I'm looking to sell it to the Israeli government. And they're like,
you can't
so
do that.
you're an Israeli spy. Like that's what spies do, dude. That's what spies do. And he's like, yeah.
Well, it's funny because it's like smart people do dumb shit all the time. Like he's so smart, but it's like fucking when Dan was like Elon Musk bought Twitter. That was fucking dumb. Elon Musk still pretty smart. And then like Dan's super smart and he said Elon Musk was dumb. So then that's fucking dumb. Right? So smart people do dumb shit all the time.
Yeah, it's just like legit. Like he admitted to the FBI that he was being a spy for Israel by selling them top secret information.
Well, it's crazy because
even unknowingly,
this stuff that he's been working on for most of his whole life. I mean, this is cutting edge. This is stuff that would really set a country forward. So he's like, I'm going to the Israelis and just show them how to, condense this rocket fuel or do this or do that. And we're like, no. That's state secrets.
Talk about a liability.
Yeah. Well, 100%, right? Because all of a sudden now Hughes gives him that was his last chance. Howard Hughes gives him the last chance, right? You fuck over Howard Hughes and the US government. Hughes is already a gigantic anti-Semite, fucking hates this guy, wants nothing to do with him. You've got Parsons now with 15 years worth of fucking rocket technology in his brain.
Yeah.
Right? And what can you do legally to get it? Like, what can you do to him now?
Could you imagine being like in the FBI and you're worried about this guy being a spy and then you're like, this is even worse than we thought. He's a fucking idiot.
He's all this information. He's a moron.
He doesn't know that what he's doing is illegal.
Yeah, he's not an idiot though.
No, he's not. He's not an idiot.
He's just
unaware of.
He's a fucking self-taught fucking genius.
Yes.
He's unaware of the implications of what he's created.
Exactly. Yeah. And then so they're thinking like, what if someone else approached?
There you go. That's the word.
What if a fucking
high intelligence, low wisdom?
Yeah.
He got a bad role on his character sheet. Not a balanced role.
What if this guy was approached with a bunch of money from like an adversarial country? Right? Like you got to think they were thinking this kind of stuff after this.
I mean, Israel was an adversarial country, but he was still approached by a diffent country.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They've got to be thinking if Israel did this easy, just talk to this guy. And he's like, let me get to you the secrets.
We're going to get into it a little bit later. And it's like leading up to his death. And you're like, I understand why people were very concerned. But
so this is when Parsons like officially loses his security clearance. Like any of the privileges that came with that are all gone because the U.S. Air Force pretty much got involved and they advised the FBI that the U.S. Air Force had been monitoring Parsons and his relationship with Crowley, the infamous Aleister Crowley, and then they kind of had observed all of these goings-ons, things like the religious cults, the sexual perversion, and also all of these things going on, and multiple crimes that may or may not have been committed, and also activities that could have been interpreted as subversive, and also like. I'm pretty sure like everybody was kind of aware that Parsons kind of leaned more towards like the Marxist ideology at that time. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, if you're on that side, it's no good. And that's when they decided to kind of revoke all of Parsons' like security clearance. And then like, if you're working with rockets
for the second time,
yeah, if you're going to,
it's the second time you got
it's gone.
You're
like
done.
It's out.
You're never getting
it back at this point. So Parsons' life comes to an abrupt end, where he died in an explosion. I guess that's not really.
He was working on
in his workshop.
Pyrotechnics. Yeah, working on. He had been commissioned to work on some pyrotechnics for some sort of movie project.
A last minute job before he had planned to move to Mexico.
Yeah,
like that day, literally, bags packed. He's fucking leaving.
So the guy who has been taking part in these experiments, blowing stuff up professionally now for years and years, has a mishap in his workshop where he's for the first time blown himself up.
Right.
And one of the this is devastating too. Like he didn't die at first, but when this explosion went off, he basically got Harvey dented, like half his face
scorched,
blown right off,
one
legs
arm
gone,
clean, blown off.
Yeah, like this was mangled. A massive explosion. Not to mention he's got tons of fucking
other stuff,
explosives just strewn about his place. The one really interesting thing that I found about this though is so one, he's potentially leaving to Mexico. That was the plan. Marjorie Cameron had actually left him, moved to Mexico, and they had reconnected, and he was going to be moving down there to be with her because she was living on a commune somewhere in Mexico. Something super interesting about this, though, is you remember the previous police chief, Earl Kynette?
Yeah.
Well, he was sentenced to 10 years. This was weeks after he was released from jail. And what was he using to fucking kill people? What was his plan?
Bombs.
Kaboom.
Well, and the fact is that he didn't die right away. Like he actually survived. And police who found him in the rubble said his last words were, "I'm not done yet. I wasn't done yet."
I thought he died on the way to the hospital, I thought.
Yeah.
He died. Yeah. He died 40 minutes after the explosion.
But they when they found him, he said, I'm not done yet.
Well, he said, I'm not done yet. He
has no cheek muscles left. It's just
That's true. That's a good point. What half of the face, but like, you know, it was just.
But there's that's super, you know what I mean? That's super fucking conspicuous.
Quite a coincidence, if nothing else.
There's the fact that he's planning on moving to Mexico with all those fucking secrets in his brain. And apparently at this time, like Mexico was they had a bunch of elements that were pro-Soviet. They were pro-fucking Nazi. There was the Latin American movement at that time. And they're like, okay, like this guy's going to Mexico. He's got all this fucking knowledge of rockets and shit like that. Like we can't, like basically everybody
can't let him go.
Everybody other than Parsons thought it would be better off if he was dead. The U.S. government, the Israelis, like fucking, you know, like a Kynette, like there were so many people that had it out for this guy. So like that's a lot of motive there too. And then there's his wife Marjorie believed that he was actually working on making a homunculus, and that's why he exploded.
What's a homunculus?
It's
artificial
like a
human.
Smaller clone of yourself. Right, which you got to fucking.
Yeah,
like you guys were talking about,
there's
like,
a really gross way to make them.
You need a genetic material for sure. Then
it's not as cool. It's not as cool as Full Metal Alchemist and the other one.
So maybe
the way to, you know, at my own peril, what's the way to make them? Just curious.
Yeah. Well, what I would surmise is it's fucking rocket erotic explosiation.
Okay.
It's a lot of like gunky stuff.
That's what happened to him if he's tugging it in his office and he blows up. Like,
it just seems like it's. I found it weird that like, yeah, he's working on something that's actually pyrotechnics are not super explosive, really. Like compared to all the stuff he's done, like there's seems like a minor thing to make.
All the stuff in his there was explosion.
I know, but like it seems like it's such a
Yeah.
minor thing to make a mistake on something you've probably done how many times by now, and then
Yeah,
to explode
I
your whole
agree.
house and then end up you die from it in the end.
Yeah.
And everybody, like a lot of people suspected that the explosion came from underneath the floor. That was a lot of the controversy there. Like they tried saying that he was holding a can of
A coffee can.
remember what
He was
the fuck.
mixing an
It was
empty
a coffee can
yeah.
with some type of explosive mixture in there, and he dropped it, and that's where the explosion came up from. But a lot of people close to him said that the explosion actually came from under the floor,
Well, it's
which would lead you to believe that there was a bomb under there.
I don't like when I was reading this one and like the theories are one, like some people are like he committed suicide, he blew himself up on purpose, but that goes against the police officers on the scene that found him and say his last
He
words.
did a
were,
shitty job.
I wasn't
I think
done.
he'd do a better job.
Yeah. And for someone you think if someone with that experience, they would have
He'd incinerate himself.
Yeah, oh yeah, he would have
He would
done the
incinerate
job.
himself. Or this guy's a known fucking opioid abuser. All the different he would just do something fucking a little bit more thorough. You would think in my head.
Is it maybe? I mean, I'm not discrediting the possibility that the years of drug use and opioid use, we know that what kind of like those addictions can do. That maybe like this is a person that is a shell of their former selves. Maybe had a
He's only
mishap.
37. He's like
Yeah.
36 or 37. He hasn't been going crazy for that long.
No.
Like this is a young man still.
But
Don't tell me 36
to
is
be
old.
honest, I'm like, you can definitely easily make that connection of why some 3-letter agencies would want him out of the picture and not
100%.
out, especially moving to other countries, and possibly giving this information. Because like if he was this much of like kind of a known rock star, maybe he was on the radar of other countries as well. The second he leaves the States and go to Mexico, like you got to think like, he's fair game to really approach and really go after. To try to get this kind of
easier
information.
to kill him in Mexico though?
I don't think it matters.
Wouldn't it be easier to hire somebody down there just to plug him in Mexico?
I don't think it matters
I
at
don't
this
know.
time.
I'm on team. He was murdered. I'm on
I
team.
think-
Well, yeah,
I'm
I mean,
on
if
team.
he went to Mexico and someone murdered him, and that story gets out, it's like he got murdered. He murdered in Mexico, but he blew up. He blew up by an accident. Is something easier to sell to the public. I think. Like,
That's what makes me think it was kind of.
like he's been. He had a house full of explosives.
Like the
He made a
cop?
mistake.
Yeah.
It blew up.
Yeah.
Tragic end to one of the most revered rocket scientists of its day.
And after this, they just like quietly white him out of the history books.
Yeah, pretty much like they went like retroactively within like the documentation of Caltech's works, like the academic papers that were stored there. Like they went and like took out a lot of Parsons like contributions. They went back and like took out all this stuff for a while. For a while.
Bullshit.
I mean, I think until recently they started kind of like reintroducing those things and reattributing.
crazy
He's
though?
probably
Isn't that
the least.
crazy?
He's like the least known scientist who made such an impact on like the modern world. And he was like, "Who's Jack
but it's
Parsons?"
crazy to
No
me,
one
it's like-
fucking knows.
It's like recently that we've been like, oh, okay, like, yeah, this guy did have some like major contributions. It makes me think of people who maybe did worse that have been just like written out of history
Completely.
that we won't know about, that we're not going to hear about, right? That who maybe had major contributions. It's kind of interesting.
Even if they weren't even major, but significant enough that they pushed us in a certain way. But yeah, they were into some sex magic, so we decided
they
that
just
they're no
love
longer
jerking
part
it.
of this. What a fucking thing, though. All right, we recognize Jack Parsons as a major contributor to rocket propulsion and to be able to leave Earth's atmosphere. So we'll give him a crater, but on the backside of the moon, where no one can look with a telescope, it lives over there.
And see him jerking it.
It does.
He's jerking it to this day.
They picked a suspicious looking crater too, just how it was shaped, just for him. It's kind of weird because like same thing. Like, obviously Nikola Tesla did way more as far as inventions and stuff, but he was kind of just like lost from. He's not really taught like until like the modern times. Like, oh yeah, he is the father of AC current. He is the person who started our entire electrical grid. But we know Edison really well because the first light bulb and DC current and all that stuff. But
Propaganda. That's why.
he's a better businessman. He did way better with business, so people remember him. Jack Parsons just
too much sex magic.
too much sex magic,
Yeah,
you know?
it was awesome.
Maybe made him
Guy's
homunculus.
fucking
Especially
awesome.
at the time too, because this is still like like Christianity, especially like religion, very prevalent. That's like it's intertwined.
What they
we
found
cannot
after
have dark
the explosion. What if what they found after the explosion wasn't Jack Parsons? That was the homunculus.
I dig it.
So Jack Parsons lived
now
on.
He's living in Mexico with his boats, with his yachts. You get busy living or get busy dying.
He made what do you call this thing? A homunculus?
Homunculus. Yeah, watch Full Metal Alchemist.
I just know this from I know it from Diablo. Come on, item from like a fucking witch doctor.
So you need to watch Full Metal.
Artificial human.
So he made a clone of himself, blew up the clone, disappeared.
Yeah.
And it disappeared.
It wasn't finished yet, and he was just like, "Well, I can just blow it up, make it look gross, and then I disappear. I go to Mexico because he knows that all these people are after him, like we just said. So why not?
What is it? Zihuatanejo? Is that where he's at? Fucking yeah.
Get busy living or get busy
dying.
It's interesting though that someone like with this kind of a jaded past and stuff, you just like, and this many connections, like he literally like L. Ron Hubbard was I'm going to say inspired by what the fuck this guy and Aleister Crowley was up to.
He ripped him off.
And then goes on to create one of like the most notoriously like infamous religion cults of all time.
Insane.
Right?
It's and fucking insane, man.
Like how much of that is inspired from his times in these communes, right? With these two guys. It's
but what other religions have similar starts to this too?
Yeah, right. Like it's
I don't know.
Like we don't even
interesting.
It just seems like such a giant grift.
Yeah, I mean we don't like our modern religions. We don't really know the exact start. Like it's been lost translations over thousands of years. And what was the original start of this? There's always a story of like fucking hallucinogenics starting religion. Like some guy did some mushrooms, and all of a sudden the bush was burning. And God was talking to him.
We should do a case file on that.
It is cool. That's a really cool theory.
Yeah, that is it. What's the theory? What's the book called again? I gotta look into
the cross and the Holy Cross and the mushroom.
Something about mushrooms.
Yeah.
Cross.
Yeah.
And
all the connections are wild. Type in cross mushroom Joe Rogan, and I guarantee you.
Joe Rogan. Sacred mushroom and the cross.
Yeah.
That's what it was. We're right there. We were right there.
You
just had a switch
just there.
Yeah.
You just had it.
Yeah. Cool.
Very interesting guy. If you haven't hashtag looked up tons of little documentaries.
Andrew read the book. You said that book Strange Angel was pretty good. You said that was good.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I think there's also really a limited TV series based on that book.
It's at my reading level too, which was nice. Not enough pictures.
Fucking pissed me off. You need some illustrations of Jack Parsons jacking it.
Yeah, I'd be that. That'd be fun. Scientific reasons, of course.
Diagrams. Worst kids book ever. This week we got a theory of the week. Big theory of the week.
Big time.
So
big one.
A big one.
We never wrote his name down in the fucking thing.
Oh, so big that it didn't fit on the page.
Yeah. So big.
Damn it.
It didn't fit on
my
the
phone
page.
is my webcam, so I can't pull it up.
We're
live.
Fanfare.
Drum roll. The theory of the week is Dark Mountain Cult.
Dark Mountain Cult on Instagram.
Cult.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of call is this? Is it jerk off cult?
Yeah, is this
it is
cult?
now.
I get into it. Yeah.
Because we were like, new logo. Yeah. and our prayers were answered.
Yes.
So the winner of, as everyone knows, we've been looking for a new logo. We've had a contest running for the past while. And the 12th hour, right before midnight, we had a submission that dazzled us.
Floored.
Right? Everyone loved it.
Boom.
Unanimously, we went, shit, this is it. It was designed by Dark Mountain Cult. We're not going to reveal it yet because we're going to have him on the show in the next couple weeks here to unveil it, and it'll be all across. We'll drop some.
I'm not going to say his real name either because I'm not sure if we're allowed.
If he's
that mysterious of a man.
Mm-hmm. But let's just say this logo was
he's a cultist.
So
could be
amazing.
a cult, very occult. He could be practicing sex magic
Right now.
Right
That's
now.
how I came up with it.
And
he actually saw the new logo in his jizz, and that's what
in those few seconds
drawing.
of orgasm, he came up with the logo.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was it was like Zell messaged. He's like, "Yo, I was just having a session, and I happened to scroll through Instagram, saw this logo, and the three of us were like, us too. We were just happened to be in sync. The sex magic was at an all-time high, and this logo was born." So we're gonna drop it some search. Maybe we'll order us some shirts on. Yeah. Disgusting. We're gonna cut that out.
I'm gonna edit it out.
And then we'll expedite some shirts and stuff to unveil it in the next coming weeks. It's really awesome. We can't wait to show you guys.
We're gonna organize and get them on the show as promised, and we will be on whenever we get him on the show to unveil. We'll also reveal the second and third place. A lot of great entries.
Dude, so many fucking awesome ones. It's going to be really hard. Honestly, it was
those 2-3 are going to be really tough to check.
It was honestly so close. Everyone was
Skytrain shirt.
Amazing designs.
There's a good one. There's some really creative ones.
Yeah,
should be the logo.
Really creative ones, funny ones. People with just a whole bunch of amazing submissions. It's going to be tough. We're going to have to sit down and kind of hash this out. But Dark Mountain Cult, you're the Theorist of the Week. If you want to check out his work. Hopefully he didn't post it. Don't check out his work.
He hasn't posted. There's no way. He's a professional. He didn't post it.
But if you look, yeah, he's got some good stuff.
Yeah,
man.
at Dark Mountain Cult Instagram. Can't miss him. He's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. If you're not supporting the show and you want early access, ad-free, support your favorite podcast, support your boys, got to go to alientheorist.com, hit that support tab. Pretty much sponsoring this episode. This week's newest supporters, we got Black Ron Pond goes up to a full year pledge. What a beauty.
Okay. OG.
It's been a long time.
He's an OGP for sure.
Let's go.
He actually wanted his artwork. You can see it just in the booth there. One of his first, when he started doing art, he drew an ATT logo.
Nice.
That's
a Black Ron Pond.
That's an OG of like when he first started. I got it in the recording booth back there.
Nice.
We got Sir Frothington, Aaron Parker, and a full year top tier pledge by Prolapsius G.
Whoa.
Yeah. Woo!
What a legend. Full year top tier pledge.
Fuck yeah.
That guy's performing sex magic for sure.
Let's go.
Absolutely.
All that guy's dreams are coming true.
For that. Let's go.
Yeah.
We got Devimon, Solid Lib, Austin Weens, and Vicky Koblentz.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for supporting the show.
At that $10 tier or more, you're in our prayers, if you know what I mean.
Your dreams are coming true.
Your dreams are our dreams.
Sex magic is being performed.
And as we always say at the end of these things, keep those eyes on the skies.
See you in after hours.